That's where we start today, the war on you. We're starting there today. I mean, we talk about all kinds of wars, this war and that war. I mean, the government always has some kind of war it wants to talk about. But the biggest one of all, they don't want to discuss or even recognize that they want you to stare blankly into your phone, drool at the TV while binge-watching some movie about Pride Month, and keep your mouth shut. Silence, peasant. The mindless bobbleheads on MSNBC and CNN chortle at the hopeless little conservatives always worried about their silly rights and freedoms being attacked, when they assure us the government's doing everything it can to help us. They chortle like the sheep they are being led to slaughter. They just don't seem to understand. When the war is being waged on center-right America runs out of targets, they will be in the crosshairs. I mean, there was a war on drugs, remember that? That went really well. Just ask the folks in Portland and Denver and Chicago. I think it's pretty safe to say the Sinaloa cartel and all the others have been cashing in nicely on that fiasco. The war on poverty began all the way back in 1965. Another glowing example of the fine work done by the progressives in improving America in the nearly 60 years since. I mean, have you seen the tent cities filled with the homeless people spread all over San Francisco and Los Angeles? Oh, and by the way, the war on poverty has cost American taxpayers just over $30 trillion. Seems to line up quite nicely with our national debt. The war on the sexes appeared to have been won by those leading the women's rights movement, but lately women are on the losing end of that entire conversation, and men dressed up as women now have all the spoils from that battle. But at some point, the Democrats, the progressives, the New World liberals decided America was the enemy. And anyone who loves this country is an enemy combatant. And they began to dig in for the long years of trench warfare. They prepared the battle plans, executed well-timed attacks, and began to make progress in their anti-America agenda. The wars are now being fought on many fronts, and those being targeted include parents looking out for the well-being and mental health of their children. Schools themselves have ended up on the front lines of the culture wars, where left-wing extremists demand the lessons include only the radical ideas they support. Police have been asked to protect us, our communities, and our families, and are now the ones being treated like criminals. The war on the police began a few years ago, and despite lip service to the contrary, it has not let up. Christians and Jews have found themselves on the receiving end of numerous attacks by the self-righteous lefties who declare them and their churches to be purveyors of hate for actually having standards and moral guidelines that they adhere to. War is also being waged on free speech, gun rights, and even Christmas, for God's sake. And for far too long, we've allowed it to go on. The left keeps attacking, sensing weakness, because that is what they've found, weakness, and a reluctance of many people to become confrontational. That comes from the war on men and boys, by the way, and the traditional nuclear family. Those wars began about the time I was born, when giving single moms bigger government checks became the fashionable thing to do and forcing dads out of the house. And of course, the war on masculinity was married to the twisted idea that somehow families were better off with all that toxic masculinity and testosterone thrown out.